Hi there, I'm your host, Mr. Doyle, and this is a great undertaking. For anyone new to the channel, I am exclusively discussing all things Stephen King, and each week I drop a new video, the topic of which is determined by the chronological order of the original book or story's publication. So far I've covered Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, The Stand, Firestarter, The Dead Zone, Night Shift, and 3 of the Bachman books. I've got handy-dandy playlists for each book set up for your convenience, so if you enjoy deep dives and analysis of King books, movie adaptations, poems, musicals, comic books, and King content of all varieties, please check out my other videos and like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you would be so kind. Today's video will be a bit of a departure from my usual chronological journey through the labyrinth hedge maze of the Kingverse, but it felt like a necessary departure that will likely give you the opportunity to check out some King stories you may have never had the opportunity to read or perhaps have never even heard of before. I was originally planning to discuss 2 of Stephen King's uncollected short stories, Weeds and The Crate, in this video, as well as their inclusion in the 1982 film Creepshow. However, I've decided to dedicate this video to a number of the uncollected, hard-to-find King stories which have fallen through the cracks over the years. Over the course of Stephen King's career, particularly during the first decade, King would publish stories in various anthologies and magazines to help pay the bills. Many of the earliest publications prior to Carrie were in what King refers to as men's magazines. In fact, Children of the Corn was originally published in Penthouse magazine. Most of these short stories would later be included within one of King's many collections of short stories like Night Shift, Skeleton Crew, and even decades later appeared in The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. But King has continued to write exclusive stories for magazines and anthologies throughout his career, some as recently as 2020. Some of these stories never found their way into a published collection of short stories or were included in anthologies of stories from various authors which have been lost to time. But fortunately, some of them can now be found online thanks to constant reader heroes who took the time to transcribe and preserve them so that the rest of us could enjoy them. So now I'll be briefly discussing each of the uncollected stories I was able to track down, and links to each of these stories will be provided in the description so that you can read them as well. There are some additional entries that aren't fictional stories, but I included them as I thought they may be of interest to my fellow constant readers. Uncollected King. The Glass Floor. Originally published in Startling Mystery Stories in 1967, The Glass Floor was Stephen's first professional sale and was subsequently published in the Weird Tales Fall 1990 edition. It has never appeared in any of his collections, but is featured in Cemetery Dance No. 68 in 2012. In The Glass Floor, a man wishes to see the place where his sister died, but his brother-in-law refuses to allow the room to be reopened. Eventually, he finds a way to enter the room with the glass floor, and he'll quickly discover that not all is as it seems. The Blue Air Compressor. The Blue Air Compressor was first published in January of 1971 in Onan Magazine, the University of Maine's own publication. It was revised and reprinted in the magazine Heavy Metal in July of 1981, and then later included in the 2018 anthology Shining in the Dark, followed by an audio anthology by the same name in 2020. The Blue Air Compressor is, to the surprise of literally no one, entirely messed up and wild. Weeds. Weeds, also known as The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill, was first published in Cavalier magazine in May of 1976. The story would be adapted to the screen for the 1982 film Creepshow, which was directed by George Romero and written by Stephen King, and was also included in the comic book form of Creepshow, the graphic novella. Weeds is a wild tale of an interstellar life form spreading like wildfire to anything and anyone it comes into contact with. The Night of the Tiger. While the story was originally written in the 1960s, it first saw publication in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction in February of 1978, and then appeared in the anthology More Tales of Unknown Terror in 1979. The Night of the Tiger tells the story of a circus employee and two rival big cat trainers who are not what they appear to be. The Crate. The Crate was first published in the July 1979 issue of Gallery magazine and was republished in a number of anthologies. This story was also adapted as a segment in the movie Creepshow and was included in the Creepshow graphic novella. The Crate tells the story of a bizarre discovery and the contents found within. The Cannibals. This novel was the genesis for King's later novel, Under the Dome, and was actually King's second attempt at writing the story. King has quite a bit to say about this one on his website, and he was even so kind as to provide a PDF download of the story directly from his site. The Reploids. This story was included in the Night Visions 5 anthology alongside stories from George R.R. Martin and Dan Simmons. The Reploids is about a mysterious man named Edward Paladin who shows up in place of Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show, but as is often the case, all is not what it seems. The Book Banners. Adventure in censorship is stranger than fiction. Published as a guest column in the March 20th, 1992 issue of the Bangor Daily News, King addresses the removal of some of his books from school libraries in Florida. King provides a strong defense of his position on censorship and makes sure to let all the school kids know they can still get his books at the public library should they desire to do so. Most overrated rock band. This isn't a short story, but in this opinion piece published in American Heritage Overrated, Underrated, King gives a pretty spicy take regarding why he thinks the Beatles are an overrated band. It's a short piece and King doesn't tear into the Fab Four nearly as badly as I had feared he would, but he doesn't pull any punches either. He also goes on to claim that Creedence Clearwater Revival is the most underrated band out there, and he of course backs up this claim as well. Cookie Jar. First published in the spring of 2016 in VQR Online, The Cookie Jar tells of a man's great-grandson coming to visit him at the Good Life retirement home where he lives so that his grandson can interview him for a school project. Instead of telling his great-grandson what life was like when he was 13, what was supposed to be the topic for the interview, he tells him about his mother who had committed suicide after suffering with mental illness for many years when he was 11, and how he inherited her cookie jar following her death. However, after her death, he and his brother discover it is no ordinary cookie jar. The Music Room. The Music Room was initially published in Playboy magazine in November of 2016. It was included in the 2016 anthology In Sunlight or in Shadow, stories inspired by the paintings of Edward Hopper as well. An audio recording of the story was also included with the audiobook of Gwendy's Button Box. In the days of the Great Depression, the Enderbys had work, which was a blessing in a year when men were still standing in breadlines. But the line of work that the Enderbys seemed to be in, well, it's not exactly an on-the-books kind of employment. Thin Scenery. This was a feature in Ploughshares Magazine, and Thin Scenery is actually a stage play that was published in script form. The show features a man who believes he is losing his mind and is seeking psychiatric guidance. He's beginning to think that his family isn't real and that reality itself is nothing more than a performance that he has been written into. King hilariously breaks the fourth wall within the first 4 pages and continues to do so throughout the play. He actually writes about the fourth wall as an actual physical wall in the psychiatrist's office. The characters directly address the audience, the stagehands become a part of the performance, and it's genuinely a brilliant, unique, and completely bizarre play. Laurie. Published on StephenKing.com on May 17th of 2018, Laurie is the story of a man and his dog who make a grisly discovery while out for a walk. It turns out that a member of the Florida wildlife community has been up to no good. The Fifth Step. This story appeared in the March 2020 edition of Harper's, and the story is about a recovering alcoholic who is confessing his various wrongdoings to a stranger in Central Park. When the confession takes a turn for the worse, the unsuspecting stranger finds out that the man isn't done doing bad things just yet. On Slide In Road. This story was published in Esquire Magazine and is only available with a subscription. I'm not spending the $40 just to read one story, but if you happen to have a subscription, you should check it out. And then create a downloadable PDF and email it to me before I convince myself to spend the $40 because I really want to read it. Like, please, someone send me this story. Alright, that does it for all the Uncollected King content. There are a few more hard-to-find King stories out there, but I only included those that I could find online and or read for myself. Some of the more elusive uncollected stories were released exclusively in one-off limited edition publications which can't be found anywhere for purchase, and in the rare event that I did manage to find one, they cost hundreds of dollars to acquire. So, due to the lack of availability or in some cases budgetary restraints, I'll have to wait on those for the time being. Next week, I'll be starting in on my Cujo series with the 1991 novel, followed by the 1983 movie, and anything else that book might have spawned for better or for worse. New videos drop on this channel every Saturday at 10 a.m., so karate chop that subscriber bell right in the genitals to get notifications. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty pleased with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.